Well, thanks for coming and thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All these
Uh,
headphones look okay. They're kind of wonky to me. Hold on.
no,
Let me
that's
move them
okay.
closer.
Did you know
Okay.
that the Gen Zers, like now that's cool to have headphone strings?
I didn't know that. I
So,
do have
y-
some Gen Zers
he-
at my house, and they tell me all the things that aren't cool all the time, which is my favorite. Mom, oh, it's so not cool. So I'm just gonna walk around with my headphones now, maybe get some cool points. We'll
there you
see.
go. I
I'll
love it.
report back.
Listen, I'd love to start a little bit about your path.
Yeah.
How did you get to where you are at Vuori now that you're the CMO there, and sort of where did you start and how'd you get there?
I like my first job when I was 16 was on a retail floor, a small surf shop in the panhandle of Florida. And
Okay.
I just fell in love with retail. I fell in love with product. I
Mm-hmm.
then went over to Gap Inc. I worked at a Gap outlet store in the panhandle of Florida. A lot going on down there.
The
Um,
Panhandle made
the
you.
panhandle of Florida, just real special spot. I'm not even kidding. It's beautiful beaches. But I just loved it. I loved the interaction with people. I loved product. I loved fashion. I loved style. And it was just like this perfect place. And I had no idea that I would spend like 3 decades in this space and continuing to kind of build on this path that I started really early on. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, even that Gap outlet job turned into, internship at Gap Inc. and at SF headquarters in the 90s. I'm dating myself now. And I just
That's
really stayed
awesome.
on the path. And it's funny because in school, I didn't start out as a marketing major. In fact, whenever I talk to, you know, marketing students, I always laugh. Like my dirtiest secret is that I took one marketing class in school. I was actually an engineering major,
Oh,
which
wow.
was that's what I
What
started
kind of
my
engineering?
I wanted to go into environmental engineering. I wanted to save the
Cool.
world. I was going to go environmental
Cool.
engineering and then go to law school. And that was the path that I thought. And then I realized it was not the path for me. And I had quickly changed my major kind of my first or second year and then kind of fell into the fashion retail space. And so did
Well, your
internships
team.
at, yeah.
Oh, go
Go ahead.
ahead.
I did a like Elle magazine. Like I was just I loved it. I just loved that world. And so I moved out to San Francisco right after graduation and just Gap Inc. And then I went to LS& Co. Was at Levi's. And then I did a stint on the East Coast at Converse. And then I came back to LS& Co. So I really stayed in fashion and retail and for brands that I personally loved. And I think for me, looking back, especially in the Bay Area during like the 90s and early 2000s, it was like tech boom. And it wasn't
Yeah.
my space. I
Yeah.
didn't even know how to like feel and touch the cloud. I didn't know what that meant. I'm like, I want to like
Right.
feel the product, touch the product. I want to have a
Right.
relationship and emotional connection with the product. So I have a short list of, brands that I love, and I feel incredibly fortunate to have spent a good chunk of my career being part of those brands and helping to create the journey and be able to build consumer experiences. And so it's just been a path that I really have loved. I feel very, very fortunate. And I think now, as I find myself here in almost 2026 crazy and Vuori, it feels like I always often say like an everything everywhere all at once place where all of the
Yeah.
experiences through my days at Gap or Converse or Levi's kind of continuing to build on this marketing journey and building capabilities and learning new
Mm-hmm.
things. I mean, God bless, the
Mm-hmm.
world is moving so fast. I feel like every
It's
day
so
I'm
fast.
just continue to be a student and like, what's happening
I
with this?
know. I
And it's
know.
just kept me really on my toes and I've loved the journey.
I love that. I talked to your team a little bit, and they told me
Yeah.
about your time at Gap and how you
Yeah.
became kind of obsessed with talking about the customer, and
Yeah.
then subsequently sent the executives like, "Here's what I think you should be doing." Can you talk to me a little bit about like that customer obsession that you started with
Yeah.
so young?
It's so wild. You look back like, oh, I was really bold back then. In fact, I had a chance to have Mickey Drexler spoke at something a couple months ago, and I had an opportunity to kind of meet him again, literally almost 30 years after first meeting him. I actually did my senior paper on
Oh,
on
wow.
effective leadership, and I interviewed Mickey, and I was an intern at Gap Inc. And so, I was I was the greeter when I worked back at like the Gap outlet back in Destin, Florida, back in the day. I was the greeter at the door, and I was the
Love
fitting
it.
room. I was assigned to the
Okay.
fitting room, and I loved the fitting room. And even I just took my daughter shopping this week, and I'm like, let's go. I feel like this is like this. I'm charged and exciting. You walk into this space, you're looking for solutions. You don't really know. Fitting rooms are like scary. It's overwhelming. And I found myself like at age 16, 17, 18, like really connecting with the humans and what they were
Mhm.
looking for. And it became less about like, how can I get all the product on you? But like, what are you looking for? And it was like that kind of
Mhm.
this journey, like psychology, like understanding who they were, what they were looking for, how I could help. And then seeing the joy in
Mhm.
their faces when they found something that really worked and they felt good and they looked good. And I just got this like charge from it. And so I was always like, my UPTs were always high. I was like, hold on, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get you that bill. I literally I was just like, I loved it. And so I
That's
think
awesome.
looking back, because we spent a lot of time talking about consumer insights and a lot of time talking about how do you create brands that can endure the test of time. I am obsessed with this idea of like, how do you create brands that people love? And
Mhm.
you got to make the best product in the world. I mean, that's like table stakes, but like, how do you really
Mhm.
connect? How do you really listen and observe and pick up all the cues and see what they're talking about and understanding how you can play a role in their lives? Like, yes, with the product, but also nowadays, it's so competitive out there. There's so many
I
things
know.
that we're competing with. So being
Yeah.
able to listen, and I back to those, like, channeling my 16-year-old in the Gap outlet floor to go, "What do you need? What are you looking
Mhm.
for? What's on your hearts and
Mhm.
minds?" And so
Yeah.
that understanding of consumers continued to fuel me, and I think that's really where brands really, when they excel, it's because they're so connected with the needs of the consumer. They're listening, they're responding. There's so many touch points that give us the opportunity to be fast in response, and that's the secret today. It's like, again, what's old is
Yeah.
new. This isn't like new AI. Oh, AI just told me to
I
connect with the
know.
consumer. It's been like since the beginning of time.
Right, but I mean, I'm sure as the CMO, it's hard to stay that connected. So because you become so
Yeah,
many levels sort of away, how do
yeah.
you think about going back to those roots and continuing to maintain that relationship with a customer?
I feel very fortunate. I get to live very close to a Vuori store. So, and I've
Nice.
got some Gen Zers and Alphas that love the Vuori store. So, I do love to pop it on the weekend and just watch
Mhm.
and listen. I love talking to the sales associates. Oh, what's working? What do you think? Oh, this new color dropped. How are people receiving it? Oh, that new imagery went up. What do you think? So,
Yeah.
I love asking those questions and hearing the honest answers. And I love, like, back to these dressing rooms, something about me sitting in dressing rooms, like my daughters are in there like trying on clothes and I'll just sit and I'll see someone kind of come out and they brought their girlfriend or they grab their husband or their partner and they want to show it. And I love watching that interaction. And I love, especially if you already think we make the softest products on the planet. And so when someone comes out and they go, and I don't know this person, I'm sitting there like waiting for my daughter who has a pile of, whatever she's trying on, and my husband's trying on a million pairs of core shorts. But to hear something I don't know, God, this is so soft. Hey, do you have this in two more colors? And I
Yeah.
love hearing that.
And
Or I
you're like,
love
"By the way,
also
that
like,
looks great on you."
I was like, girl, that looks awesome. Did you see your button those? And she'll be like, oh my God, this is great. Thanks. So I think that and I do that, pretty regularly. Then the deep ones when you actually go into the world, when you're not in your own stores. And I think that's the other part that is harder. I think as you're busy. And I think, when I was at Converse, this was something that our CMO at the time really wanted to make sure we were out in the world. He's like, how can you write a brief about the thing if you're
Yeah,
actually not in the world with your consumer? And so we spent a lot of
absolutely.
time at music shows, at concerts, and out there in the world. And so I think you've got to find the right kind of cadence for you to get out there, for you to go with your
Mhm.
team. I think it's always
Mhm.
hard if you ever go with your cross-functional partners, you grab your partner from product and finance and you're walking through a store or a market or, you're on some market trip, you see the world through so many different filters and functional lenses that help you really understand the requirement as a
Yeah.
leadership team to really be able to deliver. And spend a lot of time going in those competitor stores. Go in there
Yeah.
just as much in our own stores, but look at what the competitor just dropped. Look at how their sales
Totally.
associates are talking. Listen to the playlist, like what's happening in those
Yeah.
stores. And so,
It's interesting, like, so much of what you're saying is so human and so
it's,
much about tactile, like, using your senses, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your your touch, and
Mhm.
so much of, I think, what we struggle with as marketers, but just humans, is, like, the digital nature of everything or being so
Yeah,
disconnected from people, and, it's like, you kinda have to remember, like, at the end of the day, we're all humans.
yeah, yes. We're all human and
You
we're all consumers. And that's something where
Yeah.
I think with marketing, it's like everyone is excited about something or not. I say our job in marketing is to make the most subjective objective. It's for like
Mhm.
everyone's going to have an opinion if they like them. Everyone's going to have an opinion if they like that look or whatever it is. But we're human, and so you got to
Yeah.
get out in the world. Like, what would you want? And I think it's
Yeah.
easier when you are the target consumer. I think there are many times my kids at Levi's are like, "Mom, you're actually not 18 to 24." So I go, "Okay, but you are. Come on over here. Look at this work."
Right.
But
What do
I
you
think,
like?
yeah, what do you think
Yeah.
about this? But
Mhm.
I think it is very human, and it's that's intuition. And I think when you're
Mhm.
in the space and you're working with brands and you love brands and you just, again, it's the psychology of the human and like
Mhm.
understanding how they operate and then looking at the competition and then kind of obsessing, like, who are we? It's almost like to make sure that you are really clear of who you are in this journey. Like,
Mhm.
what do you stand for? It's like being also like a human, like, those people that are in your friend network that like are really confident. They know who they are. They show up
Yep.
consistently. You're like, that's like a
Yep.
really good brand.
It's clear.
And
It's
so,
sharp.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So for brands, I was like, do they know who they are? Do they have a clear
Mhm.
identity? Do they
Yeah,
confident? Are they
absolutely. Yeah.
exuding kind of are you clear what their
Are we
values are and their purpose? There's no
are we
difference.
trying to be too much to too many people? Like, do we
Exactly.
need to be, more niche? Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, exactly.
You've said that you don't do things in half measures. Where do you
Oof.
think this intensity and sort of passion comes from? And how do you manage that without burning out?
This is like the question of the century. I think
Right.
I have
Asking
always,
for a friend.
yeah, I know, just someone who's asking really fast. I think that, so I've always been fast. As I was a kid, I stuttered. I was youngest
Oh,
of three. It's like
wow.
if I did not keep up, I was going to get left out. And
Wow.
so I was just, it was part of my big family. There's a lot going on. And it was just kind of, we all move fast. I mean, in fact, my
Mhm.
grandmother was a race car driver, which
Oh my
I loved to
god.
call because I was like, we just go fast. This is just in our DNA.
Is
And
this
so,
back to the Daytona thing? She was like a Daytona
uh,
race car driver?
no, she was not. But I will
Okay.
show some other photos from like the 60s of her in these like rad sports cars. I mean, it's just like one of the
What?
coolest.
That's amazing.
And the theme of like race cars has kind of like been a consistent thread through my life. And I think that it's been, I go fast, I move fast, and I've tried over the years to slow down. And I'd be
Mhm.
told early in my career, like, just slow down,
Slow
speak
down.
slower, your message is
Mhm.
getting lost, just slow down.
Yeah. Yep.
And I tried, and sometimes you realize this is like the years of like wisdom. You go, I don't actually do slow. And I think I tried.
Mm.
In fact, I
Mhm.
had other journeys. It took me out off the corporate merry-go-round for a little while to try to find slow and try to figure out medium. Like, what's my like 80%? Like, what if I just didn't go so hard?
Right.
And I think it's so hard when you're programmed a certain way. And so I think it took
Yes.
me a long time to accept that, like, I am programmed this way. Instead of trying to like
Mhm.
shut her down and tell her to be quiet and tell her just to slow down, how do I harness that? How do I use it for good?
Yes.
How
Harness
do
it for
I,
good. Yes.
yeah, and like,
Yeah.
but also know that like for me, like if I'm a race car, I don't want to get the speed wobbles. I want to be like really
Mhm.
smooth. So it means I need pit
Mhm.
stops. So I'm
Yeah.
not going to be like at 80%. I'm going to give you 200%, but guess what? I'm going to peel off over here for a little
Pull.
pit stop. I'm going to recharge.
Yeah.
And I've learned how to do that on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a quarterly basis or an annual
Yeah.
basis. And that may look
Mhm.
different for me today than it did 20 years ago.
Yeah, that
Um,
makes a ton of
and it,
sense.
yeah, and I think it's you got to get to know yourself and not try to shut things down that are just authentically you, but also don't
Know
let it.
thyself.
Yeah, man, tell me about that. Let's go to that. Let's go to that podcast, Lori. But I think that's where,
Well,
yeah. Hopefully that
yeah, I mean,
but the burnout is real, and so I think it's
yes.
knowing where your pit stops are and how to refuel, and be really kind to yourself, but also like
Mhm.
not be your authentic self. You got to do you, but do it in a
Mhm.
really smart way that doesn't, right? Because you don't want to burn out, right? You got to. This is about the
Yeah,
long game here.
absolutely. Absolutely. I know that you took, and the New York Times has actually coined this phrase called the power pause, which is where women are taking some time away to either like travel or just not work or
Yeah.
spend time with their kids. I know you did that in Costa Rica, and I'd love to know a little bit about your power pause.
I love this term. It's funny. I was first asked about this at South by. I never talked about this. At the time it came up, I was like, "That's like not on my LinkedIn." And it was one of those things that I think when we did it, it wasn't like a thing. I mean,
Mhm.
we had 3 kids. I'll say it was over 10 years ago, and I was considering kind of departing kind of a role I was in,
Mhm.
and we'd been going down like everyone. You go on vacation every year, like, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool?" And you're like, look at real estate, and
We should live
it
here.
oh, we should live here. It's amazing. And then you get back to the grind. You're like, oh, just kidding. That was amazing. And then we've been going to Costa Rica every year since we were dating. So 2001 was our first time my husband and I went down. We were just BFGF back then. And so fast forward, we're at a place in our lives where we're just like, this is just, wow, let's just take a beat. Let's just take a beat. And then we started like, what if? And that what if became like an Excel doc. No, what if became like scenario planning. I'm like, okay, how about we do this? And we just started to kind of game plan what would need to be true if we were going to take a minute. And I have 3 kids and I was pregnant with my son. And I remember thinking, Europeans take really long maternity leaves. So what if I actually
Mhm.
just thought of this as like a mat leave? Like I was just living in the UK and I'm taking
Yeah.
a long mat leave. And so
Yeah.
I started to kind of think through it that way. So it wasn't like because I wanted to make sure for my career, I didn't feel like I was quitting. And this is where
Mhm.
when you're driven and ambitious, the idea of stepping off the merry-go-round for a minute is really scary. 'Cause you're like, how do I re-enter?
Mhm. Mhm.
And we figured it out. We moved. My son was a few months old. But on paper
That's
sounded great. And the
awesome.
moment came like, this is crazy. What are we doing? And it was an incredible time for me. I mean, in fact, that's where I really got very clear on me and my speed and the way I'm programmed. And I think for me, going to Costa Rica, the land of Pura Vida, was about slowing down. And I'm like, oh, if I just take myself out of here, I'm going to slow down. It's going to be, and I
Mhm.
realized like, it didn't matter. I joke. I was like, I became like crazy about like, I'm going to learn how to master the shortboard. I'm going to like figure out how to, I'm going to collect so many shells. Like it became like
The most
obsessed.
shells.
It didn't matter. I was like, and after a year, we were like, it's time to go back. Like, I'm not done yet. I haven't found medium. And we kept extending our time. So like, but I'm not ready yet. I haven't figured out how to slow down. And at the end of it, my husband's like, you don't slow down. This isn't actually
Right.
you. And so I realized
Right.
it doesn't matter. And that was the moment I'm like, oh, damn it. Okay, we got to go back into like, let's re-enter the world. And I came back and actually joined Ellis and Co. When right when we got back, about 6 months or so. And here I am. I think so. It was a moment though for our family to really reconnect and get really, it was incredible, incredible time for my kids. It was an awesome time for our relationship. And it was just one of those things that also
That's
you're like,
awesome.
you can do it. It's scary, but like,
Yeah.
God bless you, whip out that Excel doc, you figure out how to do it and do it. And I think it's really changed me for the better, that experience.
I love that. It sounds like you really like connected with yourself and kind of got to the place where you're like, no, I am who I am. And I'm just going to have to accept that for better or for worse, which
Yeah,
I guess is the goal of all of us,
that's
right?
That's hard. It's a daily, because I think you're
Yeah.
told you're supposed to be something.
Hmm.
And even like I look back at the times I was told slow down. Like I don't do slow, but how do I do fast in a way that's really productive and isn't
That works for me.
damaging?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, speaking of, if you could tell your younger self a piece of advice, looking back now, your 22-year-old self, what would you tell her?
Yeah. It's funny because at first like slow down. Like I wouldn't tell her to slow down. I think I would tell her to be more present. Because I think
Mm.
there is when you move fast and when you're ambitious and you're driven, you're looking at what's next. What's next? I got to
Mhm.
have this job
Mhm.
next. You're always looking at like you're plotting and you're planning your 3-year plan, your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan. And there are moments that, whether in career or family, you blink and like your kids are, I just sent my first kid off to college. You're like,
Oh
what
my god,
happened?
congrats.
I read whole
Yeah.
chunks of life. You're like, wait,
They're just
where was
gone.
that? They're
I
gone.
know.
And so I think it's like those are the pit stops. That's like the taking the
Mhm.
beat for a minute and going, okay. And
Mhm.
now I've learned like our weeks are crazy. And you get to the weekend, you're like, just let's take a beat. Let's have dinner
Mhm.
at the dinner table together.
Right.
And let's
Right.
talk about what happened.
Yeah.
Turn off all
I
the
love
fucking
that.
devices and put your shit away. So I think it's like I tell my younger self to be more present and just really clue in and be very aware of my surroundings and community and friends. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's that
I
simple.
I I have the same thing. I have to be like, be in this moment, not the one in the
Yeah.
future, this one. But one of the things I love
Yeah.
to do on this podcast is I love the audience to understand from somebody who's so successful, who's in such a amazing job at an amazing company like Vuori, like how can they learn from that? And so I think one of the things we don't talk about enough is the moments that don't go as planned.
Yeah.
Could you share a time that maybe something happened that felt like a failure or a step back, but actually it was a turning point?
Totally. I think that I think a couple things. I think when you're driven and you're ambitious, when you don't want to acknowledge when things don't go well. I think you go, okay, and you just, it's either you're embarrassed or you feel, I mean, it's humbling. It is humbling when you either have a plan or a campaign or a process was going to work or a hire that was going to be the next best, like, rock star. Or, I mean, there were early days, I think, and again, back when like TV was like the end all be all for our campaigns, like some didn't make it to the world. I
Right.
remember sitting there at the
Right.
project and we were trying to get it done and the copy wasn't coming back right and then we'd over budget. And she looked at me and she's like, it's not working. This failed. And I sat there and I was like, when you're a type A, go, 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 and a straight A, you're like, but no, 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 I don't feel. I got to fix this. I got to
Mhm.
fix this.
Mhm.
And it was so hard to sit there and go, holy shit, yeah, it didn't work. And I think as I've gotten older, to take a moment when you have things, and they could be small or really big, you go, hold on, take a minute and reflect on what happened. And I think taking accountability, like, wow, where did I lead us? Maybe in a direction that wasn't right. Where did I ignore maybe data or insights that would have told us to do
Mm.
this and we didn't? But I think oftentimes we move so fast, we're just like, oh, okay, that happened. Let's just keep going and maybe no one will notice. And I think what you got to do is kind of take a beat for a second and really stare it down. And I think as a leader to say like, hey, I did that. Yeah, I got us there.
Yeah.
I got us there
Yeah.
and we didn't mean to get us there. So let's take a
Yeah.
minute and kind of owning up to it and then helping
Sure.
your team look at it through all angles. Or if you've got someone on your team who, you know what, it's not always going to hit. You're not always going to get some program that hits this EMV through the roof or whatever your KPI is. And to say, okay, cool, let's talk about it. What happened? And then immediately take those learnings and go, how do we apply this to the next thing? And we move so fast in this world and we never have enough
Yes.
time, like hindsighting, like, well, we're supposed to do that. And we kept moving and now we're into this next thing. Like, take a minute. Take a minute. And I think if your
Yeah. Sit
leader or
with it.
manager isn't asking for it, to say, hey, can we just take a second and talk about this? Because that didn't feel great. And I know that like we wanted something else that it didn't deliver. And so I think,
Yeah.
but those are hard. There are a handful of
Those are
that I
tough
remember like,
moments.
yeah, sitting there, like, when she said that to me, I remember like literally like, still feel that like pit in my stomach. And you're like, no, 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 no. I deliver A's. This was an F. This isn't. Actually, do you remember in engineering actually getting a
Right.
really bad grade? You're like, no, wait a second. This isn't how it's supposed to work. But
I don't get you're like, "I
those
don't
are.
get Fs, excuse me." Yeah,
But sometimes you're going to get
absolutely.
enough.
Of
Sometimes
course,
you're going
and
to
by
get
the way,
enough,
that's life, right? We
and it's
have to
just
have successes and
exactly.
failures. Yeah.
Exactly. And you got to learn from it. And I think that those are those huge growth moments. Because you won't do it exactly the same. It doesn't mean that you're not going to make another, you're not going to trip up again. But I think that being able to really own it, um, be okay being humble and figure out how to like turn that moment into really great insight for next time. Like that's everything.
Mhm. So I think my final question for you
Okay.
is, you're in this fast-paced world, we're all in this fast-paced world, but obviously the CMO job is very fast-paced, and especially in retail. And I guess my question for you is how do you find how do you make space for intuition?
Mhm.
When you're in this world where you're data-driven, high stakes, like how do you like find intuition and tap into that and say, actually, my gut is saying this?
Yeah. I think it's increasingly becoming harder because there's more data. There's more data and there's more competitive threat, especially our space. It's just like it's loud. There's demands and pressure from competitors, investors, and teams. And
Yeah.
so I think that it's about like knowing who you are as a brand, and I think knowing who you are as a leader, and knowing who you are in your functional area of expertise. And so. I think that you can lead by intuition for so long and you got to check it with insights. Go, hold on, am I right? And I think also knowing like I was feeling this way, but oh my God, all the data or everyone else is saying this, it's actually relook at it. But I do think there are moments where you go, I know, I
This is
know,
it. I
and this is
know.
going to
Yeah.
hit. And
Mhm.
you have teams that also, they know. And so I think that you have amazing teams of experts who just know the next thing or who the artist is going to be or what the hell's going to hit in social. And I think just being able to surround yourself with those experts as well who know their area so, so well. But I think it's about knowing who you are as a brand, knowing who you are as a leader, knowing back to the consumer, what the consumer is going to want, and just being having confidence in that and really leaning in. And
Yeah.
yeah,
What's one thing you're really excited for Vori for this year?
Building our brand. I think I joined this brand because it's an incredible, rich, multidimensional brand that's got so many layers and texture to it. And I think we have the incredible
Totally.
opportunity to have this incredible founder who is like a walking embodiment of the brand. And we've built this brand. It's been 10 years this year, which is incredibly exciting. And um,
Wow.
I've been in apparel my entire career, and it really is the best product that I've ever had a chance to work with.
Yeah.
And um, we've got an incredible, vibrant fan base that are obsessed with the product, but our brand awareness is fairly low. And so we've got to go meet some new fans and build the brand and really kind of pull the curtain back and let people know who the brand is, what our brand purpose is, how we bring the brand ethos to life. And so that's the rich brand storytelling and really creating a pathway to create those emotional connections with our consumer. Like that's everything. That's why I get up in the morning and feel very fortunate to have this job.
I love that. Well, Karen Riley Grant, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Lauren Douglas. Thank you for spending your Friday morning with me.
No, I loved it. This was great.